The following is not suitable for children under the age of 18. This show contains coarse language and sexual themes that may be deemed over the top, as well as my own personal views. Please note all characters of the show are fiction and are not targets of anyone or anything, but are made up for complete satire. Hello my masters and welcome to the Genie Show, the holiday edition. This series is all about the wrestling shows of the past and to see whether they hold up now. I have a DVD library stacked up in a corner of my house from 1985 to 2012. I have other shows as well on my computer that range from early 80s to now. The rule I give, they have to at least be 5 years old, because any time really before that is still kind of recent. Probably 5 years is a stretch, but hey, that's how I'm going to do it. The reviews are random, to the point I don't even know what I'm going to review until I do it. So you are getting to listen to these reviews fresh off me watching them. There will be at least 3 reviews. The first one is coming up right after the break. Are you looking for a good laugh? Then check out Getting the Corner. Getting Dark Corner, Dark Corner, Dark Corner, with hosts Yuck Nasty and Dogger Baby, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. on Mixlr. Check them out on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on Mixlr. So the original show that started it all, the absolute worst show to ever come on anywhere, the Genie Show, filled with gags, wrestling news, and wrestling reviews. The very first show back will feature the review of New Japan Pro Wrestling's Wrestle Kingdom 11, coming in January of 2017. For fans of the show, please also check out the Don Tony and Kevin Castle show. Don Tony and Kevin Castle show is a hard-hitting, with brutal honesty type show, as they give their views on the world of professional wrestling and WWE. They are also on Stitcher and iTunes. If you want to catch them live, listen to them on Mixlr. And we are back. And for the next review will be NWA Starrcade 86. Normally with reviews I try to do what happens a year from now of that event, But as of recording time, I haven't really had much time to do a lot of research, so it'll be just the reviews of the match. The main event was Ric Flair versus Nikita Koloff. Originally, it was meant to be Magnum TA, but Magnum TA, before this event, was injured in a car accident and was forced to end his career. Nikita Koloff, who Magnum TA was feuding with at the time also, prior to this match, took his place. Rumour has it that Magnum TA was supposed to win the World Championship from Ric Flair. But as we go on, we go with the opening matchup. Brad Armstrong versus gorgeous Jimmy Garvin. Jimmy Garvin came out to ZZ Top's Sharp Dressed Man. And I've had the opportunity to see ZZ Top live. And if you haven't, and you have a chance to, do it. It is worth it. They put on a really good show. For damn sure. Anyway, to the match. The match started off slow, but built as it went on. It was a great show opener with great action. They both wrestled to a draw. The next match was Hector Guerrero, who looks strikingly like Eddie Guerrero, more so than the other brothers, and Baron von Raschke versus the Barbarian and Prez Watley. This was a horrible match. Baron von Raschke was past his prime at this point. Guerrero and Raschke get the win. Post-match, the heels beat down Raschke, but Guerrero makes the save. Next up, we had the US Tag Team Championship. It was Ivan Koloff and Crusher Khrushchev versus the Kansas Jayhawks. That was Dutch Mantel and Bobby Jaggers in a no DQ match. It was an okay match, a good brawl, with the Russians retaining the titles. We go on to the next match with Rick Rude versus Wahoo McDaniel in an Indian strap match. Try getting that past anywhere this time in year. I guess it would just be called a strap match. This was a really boring match. There was nothing interesting. Wahoo wins the match. Post-match, Rude beats down Wahoo. Hector and Raschke make the save. In the next match, they have the Central States Championship with Sam Houston versus Bill Dundee. This is a quite good match here. Sam Houston is still the champion after Bill Dundee was DQ'd for using a boot, and the referee caught him doing it. We then had Jimmy Valiant versus Paul Jones in a hair versus hair match. It was a terrible match, like most of Jimmy Valiant's matches. Jimmy Valiant wins. After the match, they shave Paul Jones' hair down. Manny Fernandez and Rick Rude come down and beat down Valiant, pile drive him on a steel chair, and leave. We then had Ron Garvin versus Big Bubba Rogers in a Louisville street fight. Pretty much it was a last man standing match with pinfalls. It was a great match here. The ref counted both men down and said that the first person to the feet would win the match. Ronnie Garvin almost got there, but Jim Cornette hit him with a loaded tennis racket. So your winner, Big Bubba Rogers. We then had the NWA World Television Championship match. It was the first blood match between champion Dusty Rhodes versus Tully Blanchard. This was an average match, nothing too special. The ref got knocked down, made Tully bleed. AJ Dillon cleaned it up, so Tully made Dusty bleed. The ref saw Dusty bleed and ended the match. Classic Dusty finish. Your winner and new World Television Champion, Tully Blanchard. We then had the Road Warriors versus the Midnight Express in a scaffold match. The scaffold built was not stable, which was really fucking dangerous. And I'm sure as fuck glad they don't have these now. Match-wise, it was terrible, but the whole thing was fucking scary. The Road Warriors win by knocking the Midnight Express off the scaffold. They chase Jim Cornette up and knock him off too. Jim Cornette actually blew both knees out. Big Bubba Rogers, who was supposed to catch him, could not actually see him due to the lights into his sunglasses. So instead of catching Cornette, he mistimed it. And looking at it, it did not tickle. We then had the World Tag Team Championship with the Rock and Roll Express defending the titles against Ole and Arn Anderson in a steel cage match. This was a great exciting match with the Rock and Roll Express retaining the titles. I guess one bit of trivia here, this would be the last time Ole and Arn would team. After this match, Ole Anderson would take time off to see his kids' amateur wrestling match. They used this in a storyline and kicked Ole Anderson out of the Four Horsemen. It would include Lex Luger as the replacement. We then get to the main event. The World Heavyweight Champion Ric Flair versus Nikita Koloff. This was a good match, but with a cheap finish. It ended in double DQ, so Ric Flair retains. You would think a big show like that would have a defining ending, but I guess with the sudden shock of Magnum TA suddenly retiring, this became a clusterfuck. Overall, it was a good show, but it was not perfect. A lot of the matches have its place in history, and that was Starrcade 86. And we'll be back right after this break. For fans of the Sky Genie show, please also make sure to check out Wrestling Soup. They drop at 9:30 on Thursday. Join hosts Anthony Missionary Thomas and Joey Numbers as they lightheartedly talk about the world that's happening in professional wrestling, as well as other current events. While over there, please make sure to check out the Saturday morning shitbox. Have your voice and question heard as Mish and Joey answer questions on their thoughts of professional wrestling or anything else going around in the world. That show drops on Saturday morning-ish. The weeks it doesn't air is because they're doing pay-per-view Sunday. Yes, whenever there's a WWE pay-per-view, Mish and Joey usually review it, sometimes with John Draper. They also have shows on Stitcher and iTunes. If you want to catch the boys live, check them out on Mixlr. And all these good podcasts out there, you wouldn't think they fuck up a lot. Well, think again. I have a show for you. Yes, the Sky Genie. Make sure to check out the Blooper Show. The Blooper Show is made up of clips. Just like then, you can tell I fuck up a lot. So I get all clips that I fuck up on, put them together, and make a show based on being a fuck up. And I call it the Blooper Show. Check it out on my channel. Although the show may not be common, try to pick the good ones and put them in. At least getting a decent show. So check out the Blooper Show today. For interesting discussion and debates on professional wrestling, check out Johnny Florida, Michael Corvin, and Old Man Jenkins on Wrestling's National Committee. They talk a wide range of topics on the world that is pro wrestling. Check them out on Wednesday at 9 p.m. on Mixlr. And we are back, and for the next review is TNA Lockdown 2008. The headline for the show was Kurt Angle vs Samoa Joe. They had met on 4 occasions at this point, with Kurt Angle winning the majority. This one was make or break for Samoa Joe, for if he lost, he would leave professional wrestling. So what happened? Let's find out. we go to the opening match, and it's the X Division match. It's an Escape the Cage match. It was champion Jay Lethal versus Curry Man versus Sanjay Dutt versus Shark Boy versus Johnny Devine versus Consequences Creed, or Xavier Woods for people of WWE. This was when Vince Russo was booking TNA, and not secretly. The match was all over the place, pretty much a clusterfuck. It made no sense. Nothing made sense. So I'm thinking an Escape the Cage match, somebody's got to climb over and escape the cage, but there was pinfalls and submissions in this match for eliminations. So it would be pretty easy to be confused on what the fuck was going on. But Jay Lethal retains the championship. We then had Queen of the Cage. So the rules of this match were that the girls would start out outside the ring and they would fight to climb into the ring. And the first two in the ring would have a singles match, and the winner would be the Queen of the Cage. So at the start, Christy Hemme, Salinas, Angelina Love, Velvet Sky, Miss Jackie, Raka Khan, Tracy Brookside, and Roxy Laveau were in this. Angelina Love and Roxy Laveau were the ones that got into the ring. Roxy Laveau got the win in a really pointless match. We then had Road Dogg versus Billy Gunn. Fuck their TNA names. And fuck this match. It was stupid. It was boring. They both looked old. They both looked stale. Road Dogg wins. They shake hands after it, but Billy Gunn takes out Road Dogg because he's a heel. We then had a cuffed in a cage match. Fucking hell. The object of this match, you have to cuff the other teams to the cage to win. God, it was fucking stupid. The people in this match were Rock and Rave Infection, Eric Young and Kazarian, who was actually Eric Young was taken out, and that was the Super Eric phase. Motor City Machine Guns, Steiner and Petey Williams, LAX, and Black Rain, Goldust, and Relic. Killer spelt backwards, did you know that? It was fucking annoying then, it's fucking annoying now. Winners were Kazarian and Super Eric. See, and that's my point about Eric Young. For so long he was a comedy character, and now you see him in WWE, and before in TNA, trying to be a serious wrestler. Hard to believe, huh? A guy who was scared of his pyro. We then have Awesome Kong and Raisha Saeed versus Gail Kim and ODB. This was a really good match here. All four women win a prime at this point. Gail Kim and ODB get the win. We then had Booker T and Sharmell versus Bobby Roode and Peyton Banks. Bobby Roode was good. Booker T was phoning it in. Banks and Sharmell were terrible. Nothing special, nothing major. Booker T and Sharmell get the win. We then had the Lethal Lockdown match, which is kind of like War Games but different. It was Team Christian, Sting, Rhino, Kevin Nash, and Matt Morgan versus Team Tomko. Yes, Team Tomko, with Tomko, AJ Styles, the Dudleys, and James Storm. Fuck their TNA names. I said the fucking Dudleys. This was an awesome match, a really exciting match. There was a spot where James Storm and Christian climbed to the top of the cage. Storm nearly goes through the damn thing. Christian sets up a table. AJ Styles climbs on the roof. Picks up a ladder. Sets it up. Climbs it. But Christian climbs it too. James Storm pushes them off. And Styles and Christian crash through a table. It looked fucking sick and scary. Rhino hits a gore. And Team Christian wins. We then get to the main event. TNA World Championship. Kurt Angle defending against Samoa Joe, who's putting his career on the line. Everything about this match, the promotion, the presentation, the big match feel to it, the way they both walked to the ring in the gorilla position, to the video packages, to the match itself. The match was awesome, well worked by these two, and easily the match of the night. Your winner and new TNA champion, Samoa Joe. Overall, the last two matches were great, but the rest of the card sucked. There was an overkill on cage matches. The whole card was cage matches. But what added to that was the stupid stipulations, which really hurt this show. But the main event is worth checking out, and that is TNA Lockdown 2008. And we'll be back right after this break. If you're looking for a very professional show to listen to the Solomonster Sounds off. His show, smokes this one entirely, is a very informative show. Join Jason Solomon as he gives his thoughts on the current events of professional wrestling. Catch his show on Podbean, Stitcher or iTunes. Also check out Jason Solomon's YouTube page where he does extras for pay-per-view shows or interviews with wrestlers in the business. Jason has interviewed the likes of Diamond Dallas Page, Bob Hardcore Holly, the legendary Jim Ross, and even Booker T. Definitely a show worth checking out. We here at the Sky Genie Show wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. If you're travelling, please travel safe. And we are back, and for the next review will be WrestleMania 5. This was headlined by Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, and was the second and final year that WrestleMania would be hosted in the Trump Tower. So let's get into it. King Haku versus Hercules Hernandez. This was a terrible opener, with Hercules Hernandez getting the win. Haku would go on to lose his crown to Jim Duggan, but would win the Tag Team Championship with Andre the Giant. Hercules Hernandez would finish off 1989 as a jobber, but would form a tag team with Paul Roma as called Power and Glory. We then had the Twin Towers versus the Rockers in a good match, and what should have been the opener in my view, Twin Towers get the win. The Twin Towers would continue the team until early 1990 when Big Boss Man turned babyface. During the run, however, Big Boss Man ended his feud with Hulk Hogan over the world title. The Rockers would go on to feud with the Rougeos and the Brainbusters for the rest of the year. They showed future President-elect Donald Trump in the crowd. We then have Ted DiBiase versus Brutus the Barber Beefcake. It was an average match with a double countout. DiBiase would go on to feud with Jake Roberts and Dusty Rhodes, while Brutus Beefcake would join Hulk Hogan to battle Randy Savage and Zeus. Zeus was a villain in the movie that Hulk Hogan was in, and WWE for promotions decided to make a match out of it. Why not, huh? The Fabulous Rougeos versus the Bushwhackers were next. It was a quick, fun match, with the Bushwhackers getting the win. The Rougeos and Bushwhackers would continue the feud for the rest of the year. The Rougeos would feud with the Rockers, but in 1990, Raymond Rougeau would retire due to a back injury. Jacques Rougeau was taken off television until 1991, where he became the Mountie. We then had Mr. Perfect versus the Blue Blazer. Mr. Perfect was making his WrestleMania debut, and this was a quick, fun match. A good, quick, fun match, with Mr. Perfect getting the win. Mr. Perfect, who was on an undefeated streak, would continue to be undefeated until his feud with Hulk Hogan over the World Championship. As for the Blue Blazer, who was Owen Hart, he would leave WWE after this match to return to Stampede Wrestling. But once Stampede closed its doors, Owen Hart would go to WCW in 1991 for a brief stint. We then had the Tag Team Champions, Demolition, in a 2-on-3 handicap match against the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji. Now, this was quite a good match, with Demolition getting the win and are still the Tag Team Champions. The Powers of Pain would feud with the Bushwhackers and the Rockers, but would split in early 1990. Demolition would continue their reign before losing their titles to the Brainbusters, but winning the titles back. But they would lose the titles to Haku and Andre the Giant. We then had Dino Bravo versus Ron Garvin. It was a pointless, boring match, with Dino Bravo getting the win. Dino Bravo would go on to feud with Greg Valentine in a retirement angle. Dino Bravo would join Jimmy Hart and feud with the Ultimate Warrior over the Intercontinental Championship, and then would feud with Jim Duggan. Up next was the Brainbusters versus Strikeforce. This was a great wrestling match. Tito Santana accidentally hits Rick Martel in the eye, works the whole match. I don't think Rick Martel even got in once. Rick Martel walks out on the match, and the Brainbusters win. Following this match, the Brainbusters would become the Tag Team Championship before losing it back to Demolition, and would leave to go back to WCW. But before Tully Blanchard would go back to WCW, he failed a drug test and would not be rehired by WCW. Tito Santana and Rick Martel would feud for the entire year. They had a Piper's Pit with Brother Love and Morton Downey Jr. in a classic bit. We then go to Jake Roberts versus Andre the Giant with a special ref, Big John Studd. Jake Roberts would go have neck surgery and then would come back and feud with Ted DiBiase. We then had the Hart Foundation versus Rhythm and Blues. This was a great match with the Hart Foundation getting the win. The Hart Foundation would go on to feud with the Brainbusters, while Rhythm and Blue went on the feud with Garvin and Snooker, as well as the Bushwhackers. The next match was for the IC title, the Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude. It was a good match, and Rick Rude became the new champion. Rude and Warrior would continue their feud, where Warrior would regain at SummerSlam of that year. He would then challenge Hulk Hogan for the world title at WrestleMania for a title-for-title match. We then had Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Bad News Brown. This was a terrible clusterfuck match that ended in double DQ. Bad News Brown would go on to feud with Roddy Piper, while Jim Duggan would go and win the King of the Ring crown from Haku, but lost it to Randy Savage. We then had the Red Rooster versus Bobby Heenan in a complete squash match, where the Red Rooster won the match. The Red Rooster would become a jobber after this, before leaving for WCW in 1990. And we then had the main event for the World Championship, Randy Savage versus Hulk Hogan. This was a great match, and probably one of Hogan's best matches he's ever had, by far. The winner and new champion, Hulk Hogan. Hogan and Savage would continue the feud. Savage would win the King of the Ring crown, get Sherry Martel as a manager, and feud with Dusty Rhodes. Hogan would go on to face Ultimate Warrior at next year's WrestleMania. Overall, while it was a classic show, not everything was memorable. This show was really all about the main event. It was easily the match of the night, but then Hogan and Savage always had that chemistry as partners and opponents. And that is WrestleMania 5. And that'll be it for this episode of the Sky Genie Show, the holiday edition. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. And if you can, please donate. Otherwise, this show will remain free. Thank you, and see you next time.